And welcome back to the happy spot where mental wellness isn't just something we care about, it's something we engineer. I'm your host, Anshar Seraphim. Today's guest doesn't just know tools, he's lived in them. He built a life from the trades and transformed that understanding into something far more radical: emotional infrastructure. With us is Jack Thomas of the Happy Spot. Behind him, if you're watching the video feed, is a yellow 1958 Corvette, a nod to both innovation and disruption. The first to use plastic in its body, it forced a whole industry to rethink the tools it used. Jack took that lesson and brought it to human systems. Jack, welcome.
Anshar, thank you so much. And just to put it in perspective, I'm sitting on 44th Street in Manhattan today, where tools were, I'd come with my father for us to come and purchase. And when I look at that Corvette, we knew we needed new tools and new material to how to fix the car.
Right, you can't just do the same thing you used to do, I'm sure. So let's start with the urgency then. Why does culture need better tools then?
When we look at the business environment, when we look at the culture and the aspect of it, companies are bleeding for $47.6 billion in absenteeism.
Oh wow.
Every year, the absenteeism is up to 40% and affecting productivity. We're still acting like burnout is a vibe. We see it as a liability in the corporate structures in New York City.
That makes so much sense too. And your approach isn't to medicate the symptoms, right? It's to treat the systems that cause them.
Exactly. Human centricity is measurable now. We have psychometric, we have structural, and we have the human score, which is the tool that we're leading with today.
So I know that we had Dr. Cliff on one of our past episodes as a South African psychologist and global advisor, and it was talking about the human score, not just as like a diagnostic, but a map of how empathy, leadership, and culture show up in your business. So why don't you tell us more about that?
Sure. So, sitting as an advisor and helping business owners and CEOs dissect the problem and looking with tools, the human score is the first tool I've recognized in the world that gives us a benchmark of the company, real time, measure that point, and we have the luxury to come back and measure it again within 90 days.
So, and because you're trying to show how important this tool is, you've talked about offering this as part of a free promotion. Is that correct?
That is correct. So the giveaway is going to be the first 12 companies. We look at all industries. It does not matter to us who it is. And we're going to be charging in the future a fee for that service. But the first 12 companies that come on board, they need to have 50 employees. That's our benchmark. We're not going to charge them a fee. The future, it'll be $3,600. So that's our gift to the community. One of many gifts in the corporate community between New York City, Northern Jersey, and we're looking to have that launch around the world.
Well, I mean, and really, if you're absorbing that cost into the course of a year for a business, that's only like $300 a month. So there's some pretty keen insights. I know that Dr. Cliff's model went into a lot of detail, and that does kind of take us into your unique approach, which is underwriting happiness. And you said that phrase a few times. So why don't we break that down? Tell us more about that.
It's a generational piece, and I could go for a long period of time, but in today's marketplace, I know my snippet. I'll give it 10 seconds. I'm 59. I'm sitting on 44th Street in Manhattan. We're about 10 blocks, maybe call it 11 blocks away from a young man at 26 years old, took it within his own right. It's now the Free Luigi movement, and he murdered a CEO of a health insurance company. I'm not
Right.
naming the company. We've all read this story, but now the word on the street is it's okay to kill if you don't agree. No, no. At the happy spot, we believe in standing up and speaking as a group as one. How do we move forward to change our culture in society worldwide? We're all going through the same thing. The human score. Dr. Cliff brought it here. Dr. Perry Noppert, we had last week, coming out of the octopus movement. in 120 countries. We're moving and changing the culture. We do it right outside of New York City, right in New York City.
So, and I understand what you're saying too, the importance of human centricity, because when we lose focus on that, we start to punish the people in our workplaces and our organizations, and we create resentment. We create that checkout mentally approach to work that has become so common, but it also takes away our stake in the outcome. It gives us that chance to feel powerless against the system, and then people start to validate things like going out and committing murder. So talking about applying the human score, measuring this human centricity, stopping these kinds of problems. I know that you have this unique approach, and it starts with this assessment with the human score. They bring you what payroll, absenteeism numbers. Where does it go from there?
Great question. So the struggle that I've recognized with the CEOs, let's call them, they're similar to myself. Middle-aged, not just white males. It could be any descent, any color. It's a generational, it's an age. If we go down, I'm 59. If we go down to your 45, your 50-year-old, and they're communicating to their 30-year-olds, it's changing the culture and the generation in how you communicate.
And so that's
We're
where
using,
the
we're using a corporate doula. So this is a concept of transitioning from the CEO, CFO that are busy asking HR, give us a report, and HR is going, we're overwhelmed. We have trained coaches, CEOs, privately held corporations on what a corporate doula looks like and how they're needed so desperately today.
right. So birth and death, like the birth of new systems and the death of old ones, right?
100%. So thank you, Anshar. It's so great in communicating with you. I didn't learn the word doula until I was sitting in a business networking group. Chike Uzoka, part of Network Newark, 5 or 6 years ago, brought a doula into our business networking. I met a woman, her name is Megan, who is a friend of a friend, and a doula. Bringing that doula, that concept into corporations, it doesn't fit the norm of today's society. But when they hear what that corporate doula and their role is, there's existing dollars that are leaking through companies, leaking, and that corporate doula, we train them to find the money to redeploy for that mental wellness training that HR is so overwhelmed in time.
Right, and these doulas, they're experts in their respective fields. There's all kinds of different um, metrics that come out of the human score. Dr. Cliff was going over some of them, and that means that there are lots of different kinds of programs that need to be addressed. So, do you bring in, these experts as needed? What does that look like?
So that is great. So there's two choices. We've decided for business owners, they could hire us and pay us for the strategic design. Strategic design is $3,600. There's 3 steps within that. Total fee is $10,000. If they say to us, no, we have our own version of a corporate doula, no problem. Strategic design, you paid us $3,600. We're happy to engage with your coaches for a nominal fee that you've already established. We're just now going to be the let's call the MSG, if I use a food ingredient, of spicing up the ingredients going on already.
So, one of the things that I think confuses people about the happy spot when they first hear about it is they hear about this notion of a chief happiness officer, and that's something that really exists a lot more in the European work culture. So, can you tell our listeners a little bit more about that? What is a chief happiness officer, and what do they do?
So thank you for asking that question. So on my journey in my professional career, I was an in-house risk officer for a large corporation, and we were trained on how to change behavior. As I've navigated in the world, we found chief happiness officers within Europe at some large corporations are by code, as if in America you need to have a CFO, they need to have a CHO, a chief happiness officer. People get lost in that word of happiness. So happiness is like not, oh, I'm all woke and happy. No, happiness is going, hey, my boss spoke to me nicely and said you did a great job and you emotionally feel good. That's a culture we're looking to strive for. They're doing it in Europe. What we have done at the Happy Spot is negotiated with large insurance companies to give a discount to the business owners if we're able to prove here is the protocol, the process for a chief happiness officer, and insurance companies love that.
I know that one of the things that because this happened a meeting I had last month actually. I met someone who works in death and dying and advocating for changing rights, um, along the lines of like New Jersey, New York, and it occurred to me then that there really isn't support for a lot of normal human processes in the workplace. We paint things over with things like FMLA or paid time off, but is that really how you support someone in a workplace family when they've lost a loved one? And it does start to beg some questions because not moving through those different phases of life can cause some real issues. Are those the kinds of things that you bring corporate doulas in on? And what does that look like for an organization when they go to put those things into place?
I'm pausing for a moment because it's a big question. And so the answer is the corporate doula has already been layered in as part of the fabric of the society. So the job is from the beginning to identify, hey, that new young intern has got a full job. That's the birth in the corporation. Hey, that senior executive that's 60 years old, their mother is just died, right? As a corporation, do you send flowers? Now, I have some friends of mine, right? I'm a Jew, practicing Jew. I have some friends of mine that are Muslim. I have some friends of mine that are Buddhist or Catholic. We in the corporations don't always know what the right protocol is. That corporate doula helps to synthesize that ahead of time. So when the communication goes out, there's authenticity that people receive on the other side.
That's fascinating. So we're going to break for a commercial here coming up real soon. But when we have you back, Jack, one of the things I'd really love to mention and talk about is this program that you have for what are called happy ambassadors and family offices. So we'll talk about that when we return.
Thank you so much.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to the Happy Spot. I'm your host, Anshar Seraphim. Today we're talking with Jack Thomas, the founder of the Happy Spot. And just before we went out to commercial break, I started to talk a little bit with you about your work with family offices and happy ambassadors. And I'd love to hear more about that if you're willing to share.
Yes, thank you so much. So the family office design was copied off of Stevie Cohen, the New York Mets. And growing up in New York, my measurement has been the New York Post. And so for guys like me, it's really simple. We've been reading the sports forever. The sports turned into the funny comics. It turned into the business. It turned to Stevie Cohn, our generation, buys the New York Mets and says, I have all the money in the world to see how we're going to make you better. But he has a process in how he goes about doing it. He's not random. And we mimic and learn from our elders within that communication. That's what we're doing at the Happy Spot. We follow 3 steps. We take the human score, we put a value. We say, pay us $3,600. We say, hey, step 2, your absenteeism. It gives us a chance to start measuring the culture against your payroll of real numbers, and we set a benchmark. Let that please be the key word I leave here today. It's benchmarking. The human score gives us the tool to benchmark, and that's a fee at your company. And then the third and the last part is we look at the cultural aspects, how we lay it out. No different than a sport, no different than what Steve Cohn has done with the New York Mets, and that had lured away a major player that was going to go to the Yankees. I don't say the name, but if you're in New York, you know that. And if you're around the world, we all look at it. That chief happiness officer, that's the new role that gives us a chance to come in. Happy ambassadors, what they are, they may not have the money to come into the corporate environment. So we created a space so all young professionals for $198 a month, they could come in and we could share the benefits that they'll have. We'll have monthly meetings, they'll have business questions, and we'll teach some of the tactics and techniques on how to be the best professional within the neurodivergent corporate environment.
So speaking of meetings, you had been talking with me before we started the interview, and had mentioned that you've been setting up some local events for people to be able to connect. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So within the Octopus movement, we're a nonlinear think tank, and we have a relationship with David Good. And so David Good helped us with a meetup meeting. He's doing over 50 meetings in the world. We are the first international neurodivergent community meeting in Manhattan on 44th Street. David Good, we're always grateful to you. Dr. Perry connecting us. And what we've done is we have learned I am neurodivergent. Sometimes people don't believe I am, but it's studying the human behavior. And so we have invited different people. We get together socially, west side of Manhattan at the Happy Spot. We buy everybody a drink. We're sponsoring stand-up comedians. Dee is at the front, owner of the New York stand-up comedy. And just so everyone knows, Jerry Seinfeld, Larry David, this is their startup. Where I'm sitting, this is where these people came from. I just stumbled upon this through our navigations. And so we're inviting others to come out here. We meet every Tuesday. We're here tonight. We're also, our next big event will be on the 23rd. We're going to be celebrating one of our members. Her name is Clementina Esposito. And we'll also be celebrating Dr. Dona, who is our first international chief happiness officer and a registered doctor in the United States. We're going to be bringing different cultures that will be meeting on the 23rd. Look for that invite. Goldie spoke to you earlier today. You and your wife are in. Riddle, Mr. Riddle, right? So Al Jabbar, you're in. Dr. Dona, you're in. And the others I spoke to earlier, more invites to follow.
And this event is taking place where?
So what we're doing is we're utilizing the Producers Club. We're in New York City on 44th Street. They have multiple venues. The part that I'm going to put it out there, we invited Dr. Perry Noppert of the Octopus Movement, founding member. We are sponsoring for him to come into New York City, depending on timing, to come to an all-plant event. We're going to be practicing wellness. We're going to treat Dr. Perry to the New York City food, to a beautiful hotel, to some breathing, to some yoga. And we're looking at June 3rd to the 6th.
I know he's going to love that.
Right. And so Anshar, we have spoken. We're looking at also having some movie reels. We at the Happy Spot, people tell me not to say this, but I'm partners with you. I'm going to say it. We advise people to get high and have intimacy relationships with people, with their intimate ones, not just anyone. But that's where we see nonlinear thinkers. We create a different environment of happiness and talking what people normally don't say.
Right. It's all about a community and relationships. And speaking of relationships, let's talk about the online ecosystem for a second. I know that the Happy Spot doesn't operate in a silo. It actually amplifies through platforms just like talkradio.nyc. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that partnership? And I believe you had mentioned something about people being able to be on the podcast. So why don't you tell us more about that as well?
Thank you. So when I started working on this process and people said I had to have a podcast and I wasn't really comfortable in doing it, I didn't understand it. So I went to my business partners and they recommended talk to Sam Leibowitz at talkradio.nyc. And Sam is a professional, 14 years. This is his company. He and I have built a nice rapport to the point of I've been given the responsibility of international global sales on that service. What's so great about Sam is it's an entire engineering team. It's existed for 14 years. They have 3.6 million ongoing followers. And what's so great about it is everyone thinks it's easy to do a podcast. There's a whole marketing scheme that goes behind it. And at the Happy Spot, we have created a service where we're going to help young professionals produce their environment. Just to put a dollar figure to do a show like tonight, it cost me $2,500 between labor, right? Print, time, yourself, right? Because you're such an instrumental point in helping create all of these things. Um, we're willing to help young professionals. We'll give them 3 spots and they could be the interviewer. Our goal is to mentor, lead, and have them join our programs so they could become corporate doulas and be part of the better world worldwide.
That's phenomenal. So that starts to beg a few more questions too. Um, can you tell us a little bit more about your journey uh, with getting exposed to becoming a chief happiness officer? And what did that journey teach you about wellness in the workplace?
Good question. I'm really pausing to digest it. So I have 3 segments in my professional career in New York City. I was third generation largest automotive adhesive distributor in New York City and many other things. So what I learned was the oral generation of sitting at a family table from my grandfather to my father to myself. Those are the things that are not written in the books. And then you talk to the other business owners in New York City that I was servicing, and they were all first generation from somewhere else in the world. You can't even begin to understand what other people are thinking until you sit with them. Second part of that career is tax lobbying in New York City against the insurance industry. And third, and if not final, was opening up my own financial practice 14 years ago. So going through the steps, but all New York, New Jersey business owners, it's not as much of who I am, it's as much as the people who I know and what they taught me. It's behavior.
So why don't you tell us a little bit more about this journey of yours moving from the tool industry into human wellness? How did that happen?
You know, the quick answer is nervous breakdown. So I was part of the generation 9/11 when people go, oh, where were you on 9/11? I was in New York City making a delivery. The question I asked myself was, where was I on day 2 and day 3 of 9/11? And day 3, I was down fitting people with masks and respirators so they could breathe and spending, right, I had 400 masks donating, going to Javits Center, going down to the pit, and then going, what's my purpose? And so that was an awakening for me. And my journey has been going very corporate training, very corporate structure, and having financial successes in the systems, but not really finding happiness. So where I sit today is understanding how to use tools, and we give it away for free to all corporations. So if anybody goes to Project 398 Incorporated, we give away the system on how that person can be happy. I will promise you that they usually, if they're serious, have to come back and hire us because they're like, okay, we're already doing that, but it's not working.
Hmm.
We're already doing it. It's not working. So what do we do? And then we show them. It's that oral, multiple generational handing down that goes on in New York City. And that's what makes us different than other mentoring and coaching organizations. We have generations of this going on since 1964.
So that kind of brings up a question that I had, because I know on several occasions when we've spoken, you've brought up something called the remedy. So why don't you tell us more about that?
Thank you. So for me, on a personal note, something I rarely talk about it, but I'll bring it up today, is I'm 59. I'm fortunate. My mom is still alive at 82. I was fortunate enough to meet my grandmother and great grandmother, and my great grandmother was from Romania, Hungary, and Austria, and spoke no English. But it was 1971, and I didn't understand a word she was saying. But the generational family, right, of my mother, my grandmother was in an insane asylum in 1952, and we were ashamed. It was real shame. So by me saying that today is what I'm hoping for others to know. You don't need to have your shame. We all carry something. And how'd I get there? I was fortunate. I grew up in a very avant-garde family within New York City, Queens specifically, therapy, breathing, meditation. Now at 59, I've built it into my life. And so we focus on everyday people living extraordinary lives. Quite often people hear yoga and they go, woo, 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 you're woke. Okay, whatever, call me another name. It doesn't matter how you classify it. To me, it matters, how do you feel? And that's what we teach. The CEOs already understand this. Their hard part is, how do you transfer that corporate leadership to the C-suite, to your management, to your everyday people? So we've created the dynamic. We're going to give it everyday people for free. You're the C-suite, you get it. And in time, we'll measure that to bring it together.
Yeah, I know that one of the things that really surprised me when I started to study more about psychology and neurophysiology is that there is a giant need to add soft skills and soft behaviors to kind of holistically develop as an individual, that you have to incorporate things like breathing and body awareness. Even if you're a highly logical person who doesn't necessarily see the benefit of those systems, that's something that my own journey has definitely taught me and has given me a lot more respect for things like yoga and the breathing techniques I was taught in martial arts. Speaking of, we're going to get back to that after the commercial break. That'll give us an avenue to start talking about things like breathing techniques, and we're going to continue our conversation with Jack Thomas of the Happy Spot.
You're awesome. Thanks, Anshar.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marcanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hi, and welcome back to the Happy Spot. I'm your host, Anshar Seraphim. Today, we are talking with Jack Thomas, founder of the Happy Spot. Just before we went to break, we were talking about the amazing development of the human score, the power of human centricity in organizations and talking about the sociocultural revolution and why employee engagement is now more important than ever. Talked a little bit about Jack's life and background here in NYC. So before we left off, Jack, one of the things that we did talk about was martial arts, and I know that's something that you and I have in common. I've been studying martial arts now since I was like, oh gosh, like 8 years old, and I used to toss out all of the meditative stuff, all of the breathing exercises. I didn't see the benefit of it until I really got a lot older, and it's funny because those skills would have really helped me earlier on in life. Um, I would like to hear a little bit more about your experience with martial arts and how did it change your perspective with things. Oh, your mic is off, by the way.
Thank you. So I like to talk generationally. So when you speak martial arts, to me, I'm 59. Bruce Lee was the greatest thing.
Oh
Enter
yeah.
the Dragon, 1974. Now, I remember when he took on Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It was almost biblical, where David taking on Goliath.
And he was a student too. It was an opportunity for them to share a screen together, which was great.
And then you had Chuck Norris. So now if you look, right, and here we are, let's call it 50 years later.
Right.
It's hard to imagine. 50 years later, where's Bruce Lee? Where's Chuck Norris?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, Jeet Kune Do was founded by Bruce Lee. Obviously, he left a legacy behind him, and then his son Brandon unfortunately died in a tragic accident on a film set. But I think he's left a whole culture. I think one of the things that I found most compelling about Bruce's story, and this is just for inspiration for me, but when he broke his back and had to be put into traction and was basically stuck in a room for months, he had to decide what to do with that time. I think we all had that shared moment during COVID. We're like, what do we do with that time? Do we sit here and feel sorry for ourselves? And instead, he decided to take that opportunity to put to pen and paper Jeet Kune Do, all of the things that he was trying to incorporate from different styles. And he used, another person to be able to bounce those ideas off of and started to basically build a system from the ground up. And I found that really inspiring. What do you want to do with this time? It was why I tried to focus on learning Spanish during COVID. So I think there's a lot of inspiration there. And then Chuck Norris, that iconic scene between the two of them. I remember Bruce being interviewed about it, and Chuck being interviewed about it. And Chuck Norris said he responded to him because Bruce was trying to get his fame up at this point. And he says, well, are you just going to have me fly over there and then fall down and you're going to get me in one hit? He says, no, it'll be a seesaw battle. Go back and forth. And Chuck got into it. So hearing those stories, amazing. So where was the inspiration for you?
So fast forward to today, he was my idol, but I was beaten up and attacked on an anti-Semitic case, being Jewish, when I was 12 years old, and I was attacked, and I will not name their names, but all my friends know I remember their names, because being neurodivergent, you don't forget what you don't forget. You don't forget what you don't forget. And I wound up doing martial arts and studying in Queens and studied under Toki Hill to defend myself so I would never feel that vulnerable. So I could take you through the journey, but I'd like to come to point in time. So point in time was beginning of martial arts. Along the way, I got hurt sparring, and I found yoga because I didn't want to go to the doctors. They wanted to operate on my back after I got hurt sparring. My back wasn't broken like Bruce, but my neck was hurt, and yoga became my change. And so today I have 325 hours of yoga breathing that I have trained for. I don't teach. I hope to share within our methodology of what we do at the Happy Spot, which we break it down into time and days of how to breathe in and think out. And so that's a nomenclature we've created. Breathe in and think out. When I'm sitting in yoga, it's breathe in and breathe out. But instead of carrying that negative thought in your mind, breathe in, think out. And within 10 seconds, I have a technique that we guarantee we could show anybody in a corporate environment on how to calm down the energy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that you were interviewed like 20 years ago on video, and you were speaking then about a desire for there to be a tool to measure emotional engagement. Do you find this new information age with all of these with tools and AI and the development by Dr. Cliff, is this an exciting time for you as far as your development as well?
So it's a great question. The answer is it's so exciting that I have to spend half of my day just to keep myself calm. So the tool that Dr. Cliff created complements the other tools that we are already working with. The human score gives people a chance to have an entry, to have a benchmark, to put a number to the table, and we have a nominal fee. The total all-in fee for valuations with companies easily minimum of $10,000. So to come in at $3,600 to put a value is trying to give numbers to CEOs going, and what do I get in turn? We'll let you try it for yourself and see how it works. Give us 12 companies. So far, anybody we've shown it to, no one says no.
Yeah, and it sounds like, the cost of not having human centricity in an organization, you lose that engagement, you get that absenteeism, you get people who check out at work. That's probably costing them way more money than it would be the metric to measure it and try to fix it. So if they're already hemorrhaging money, they should be thanking you. So that kind of takes us to the subject of economics. I know that you've spoken on the topic of human economics before. What do you think of what's going on in the world right now?
I love it. Everybody is so afraid. I don't love that they're afraid, but there's chaos. And so being part of a nonlinear think tank like the Octopus Movement and having other professionals like yourself, like Dr. Perry, I don't want to make a mistake, but there's so many different names that when we come into that nonlinear think tank, there's a book that was written many years ago called Co-opetition. It was written by two different economists in 1997. And so I was raised as a kid, 1977, playing baseball, and you win, you compete, and there is no losing. If you lost, you just were taught how to lose. 1997, 20 years later, when the book is written of co-opetition, it's talking about technology, that there can be truly a win-win situation. Now, if we look at history and timing, and we're 20 years later, it takes time for those tools to come in place. And so the tool that we're using today of Zoom, 6 years ago with my professional license, I was not allowed to use it. And now today, it's the only thing I use for my professional encounters, the tool of Zoom. Now we are utilizing our expertise at the happy spot of going, there are tools that are sitting at the table of money that has not been tapped into. We teach the corporate doulas how to tap the money so that they can spend it for the wellness of all the employees. This is how to create a societal change.
So I was looking at the Happy Spots website, Project 398 Inc. And on that, there's a list of different tools, and included in that are some books. Now, I know one of them that was mentioned that was really important was Global Class, and you talked about, a few times on this topic of entrepreneurs. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. So the concept of an entrepreneur is an international entrepreneur. So before Zoom, myself professionally, I was exporting to Haiti, Puerto Rico, Russia in the 90s, automotive parts out of New York. We were buying things out of Brazil, out of Turkey. That was just commerce or business. But today, to exchange ideas, you're now an entrepreneur. You're internationally doing it. And the global class created this word that I really bought onto. They've given us, all of us, the business model on, we don't really want to leave where we're usually living. We're usually pretty happy being local, focus local, scale global, using technology so we could have a better life living local. Global Class did a great job of putting that business book that I recommend for everybody to read for their own business, whether you're working with us or not. I don't
Now,
get paid to say that. It's just I believe in how I've been able to communicate with people around the world.
so I that's amazing. I know that one of the things that you guys have to focus on at the happy spot is behavior, right? Because once we get all of this information and you get this expert advice and opinion, you've got to move into the realm of human behavior to work on that. And one of the books on your list for the tools really made me smile was "Who Moved My Cheese?" We gotta tell the audience about that.
Sure. So for me, the key word is approach. So the book itself that was given to me as a gift from a friend of mine who is now a real estate developer out of New Jersey, doing properties up in Buffalo, 200 rental units in Pittsburgh. Each time in business, he changed his approach. So it's the approach model that when someone comes to the happy spot and they come and say, okay, you're a corporate doula, we have sales techniques on identifying the behavior and how someone is looking across from us and how we are going to respond. The beauty is I'm sitting right here. Stevie Cohn, just so you know, you're a targeted person of a family office we're looking at. So Stevie Cohn, the owner of the Mets, my modeling is built off of how he goes, how do we teach our own family and how we want to behave? We have the ability at the happy spot, we could plug in on a tool that will analyze how we could identify and best serve that person we're pursuing.
Well, Steve is a systems builder too. I think looking at most of the stuff that he has online, it becomes very obvious that he has an analytical way of looking at data and information. So I would think that a psychometric tool that could save so much money would be of high interest. So we're going to have to break off to a commercial here soon. I do want to talk for a moment about current events, and obviously that's going to overflow past our commercial time, so we only have about 45 seconds. But how do you weigh in on everything that's going on right now?
So the easiest way to do that is let's look at what's going on with President Trump and China and how the tariffs have been delayed 90 days. I'll happily give you the concept of in New York, President Trump is originally from Queens, and how people in the real estate market think and how to behave. And I remember when China started importing, their largest Chinese community is in Flushing, Queens, in the world outside of in China. So these are the cultures that we grow up and live in, and happy to give some insight, and hopefully some of our other entrepreneurs will want to get engaged and learn more of the other local events going on in New York City.
That's awesome. I can't wait to hear more after our commercial break.
Thank you.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Ready to serve up success with a splash? Hi, I'm Bruce Kramer, a.k.a. the Corporate Cockroach.
I'm the Renaissance woman, Angie Snowball.
And I'm your strategy doctor, Dr. Meltex Desange, inviting you to serving up success with a splash.
Join us as we shake things up with real talk and real strategies centered around awareness, action, and accountability.
And yes, there really is a cocktail involved. Please join us and sip your way to success.
Serving up success with a splash, where wisdom meets happy hours. Cheers!
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 You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hi, and welcome back to the Happy Spot. This is your host, Anshar Seraphim. Today, our guest is Jack Thomas, the founder of the Happy Spot. Welcome back, Jack. So I did have some more questions for you. We were just recently talking about current events. I know that things like tariff changes and all of that are drastically affecting business. I know that AI is also changing the future, the way that we do business. One of the things that I've heard you speak on before is talking about futurism and how things are going to work with AI. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what your experience in the business world has taught you about that?
So when I look back, I think in my head through the quick history. And so I'm going to touch upon a topic that most people in my business environment don't look at, but I'm going to start where I am and then get into the meat of it. So the concept of futurism, transhumanism is a Greg Braden concept. So Greg Braden is a brilliant scientist. He's 70 years old. He's been talking about, hey, what happens when AI takes over our system? And he asked Ray Kurzweil. So why that's important? Ray Kurzweil is an economist that is originally from Queens and invented the synthesizer. Why is that relevant? Music and sound. So for healing, if you notice the sound that is played in the background when we do the opening and the closing of the show, those are megabeats. Those sounds are gently laid in there. And so that's what we do is we teach corporations how you can layer little pieces in there. So when a Greg Braden goes, the whole world is changing. Are you a human or a transhuman? And let's ask Ray Kurzweil. And Ray Kurzweil, he called AI 60 years ago. He goes, hey, I'm an economist. You're the scientist. You tell me. And here's the argument. Go to Europe, they say, hey, we have a chief happiness officer. And you come to America and we say, hey, we're nonlinear thinkers. Hey, and at the Happy Spot, we go, we got it. We got it. So we're nonlinear thinkers. We're part of different think tanks around the world. We sit around, we comfortably talk about getting high. We made it a safe space for other professionals that can come in here providing benefits and say, okay, how do we solve the problem?
So that does provoke a question for me. In your experience, what's the most common lie that corporate cultures tell themselves, and what do they lose by continuing to believe it?
So as we made reference of absenteeism before, so instead of telling them what their lie is, their emotional lie, I don't know, but their number is their number. So if they're coming to me going, hey, we have a problem, you figure my number out, we already know at the Happy Spot it's an emotional problem and the numbers aren't going to tell us, but we talk through numbers. So in that illogical concept, here's what it looks like. CEO, hey, we heard about your work, no problem. We have a conversation. We find out their psychometric points of what's important to their culture, their business. We take their existing payroll, we take their existing loss ratio within their business. We then have hard numbers saying, here's your benchmark matched up with the human score. The human score kicks off a report and it tells HR areas that they can improve upon. We utilize the absenteeism report, which is a hard number. There's no woo-woo in there. And we say over the next 90 days, we're going to work with your existing program. We're going to suggest bring in something else because it hasn't worked of whatever you're doing. And then we start measuring within 90 days. It's the measurement of that hard number from beginning to end. And that's the risk metric portfolio that we use.
Well, right, and there's a real cost to, negative behavioral cycles in organizations, and just like people, businesses can have belief systems, and they can put their, move their chips onto the wrong belief system. I remember I was interviewing the former marketing director of Coca-Cola at one point, and he was talking about the failed venture of New Coke, and it was that they had gotten pulled down out of their wheelhouse. They started to focus on making a product that tasted better instead of actually thinking about what had given Coke its legacy. And it's one of those, if you try to drag a pig down into the mud to wrestle with it, you're just going to get dirty and the pig will enjoy it. That's what Pepsi did to Coke. They wasted millions of dollars on that. So that means that there is an understanding of value that isn't just about quality. That we do have an organic society, and organic corporations need to be able to move. Organizations need to be able to move around that. Has your understanding of value changed from moving from this huge history of decades of being in financial industries and then moving into mental wellness?
Yes. So let's talk about what happened to President Trump. I'm not a political person, so I'm neither here nor for. But President Trump was asked to insure and rate some of his assets at a higher level. I have worked in the insurance world. That's a common thing that does happen. There's a moral clause that goes in there, but ultimately there's a value that's established by some tool. What we're looking at, there's not been a tool to value the employee's relationship within the company. For instance, when companies are bought and sold, and I'm going to shift a little bit of the topic into merger and acquisitions. So the merger and acquisition industry in New York is a major industry. It plays into capital, it plays into money, it plays into ego, it plays into as a bigger set of, hey, I'm the Wolf of Wall Street, right? So the Bernie Madoff, right? I grew up with those people. They come from 2 towns over where so it's normal in there, but no one has done anything on, are they happy? The human score gives us a number, it gives us an outline, it gives us a plan. And we at the Happy Spot have been doing this for generations. We understand that. And we've already implemented these things.
So as a person, except myself, I didn't get my autism diagnosis until I was like 19, and average age of diagnosis now is 4 years old. So I try to think about how different my life would have been. You didn't get your diagnosis until much later in life. Do you have a different perspective on neurodiverse thinking and neurodiverse identity looking backward at your life when you reprocessed it after that revelation? What did that teach you?
Wow. What a great question. What did it teach me? So the answer is it taught me so much. And in addition, the way I live my life today, one of the techniques that we share with people that have ADHD or neurodiverse, the technique is called and one.
Mhm.
So if I'm in sales, I'll train someone to ask and one more question, but don't become annoying, and tell one more story, but don't become annoying. So for my own self, and that's the inside work, and I hope that makes you smile as I say that word, is for myself, I only ask myself and one time, what did I learn? Because that's the part that society doesn't tell you. If I spend so much time asking that question, then how can I ever have time to move ahead? So the quick answer to your question is, I count my blessings when I was working with a business coach out of Spain. Her name is Yvonne Dom, and she shared with me that maybe I should be talking to this group of neurodivergent, and it changed my life. And what I recognized is working with other professionals that think what people say out of the box, nonlinear thinking, polymath. We all show up in the room knowing we're already in a multiple thinking process. So we give each other permission in a cultural way that may not be the norm in other business settings that I have sat in. It's been liberating in the business world on a personal level. I will say I was on the phone today. I had to call QuickBooks. I'm changing my bookkeeper. And the first thing I say to people when I hop on a phone now is, I am neurodivergent. I'm a nonlinear thinker. Can you please speak slower so I can hear you?
Yeah, I have issues with people talking at the same time, so I have to have a few of those human moments myself. We're almost out of time today. We only have a couple of minutes left, and that's just sad because we have so much to talk about. Um, but here's a question I do want the answer to. What do you think is the smallest observable action in a company, at a company, that tells you everything you need to know about its culture? I think for me, and this is just from my experience because I have kind of a different journey through, sales and industries, is the way that people answer the phone. I've noticed that you can hear a person's day in their voice, and if they're reading a script that they're supposed to say every time they pick up that phone, the you can tell how tired the social performance has gotten over the course of the day. I think if I had to pick one thing that really told me what was going on, it would be that. But I'm also a behaviorist, so I was just curious about you. Would it be a printout of a particular report, or what's the thing that you would want to look at?
So the quick answer is there is no one thing for a company, but there's always one thing. So what we do at the Happy Spot is I consistently look at 4 documents from the beginning. I'm going to look at a LinkedIn page. I'm going to look at the personal bio of the person. I'm going to look at their tax returns, and then I'm going to look at their loss ratios in their business. When I look at those 4 things, I'm going to have a pretty comfortable understanding of how they're thinking personally and professionally and how I can serve them. I think the most important part I really want to leave the group is there is a no judgment zone in the world we live in today, in the business that we're in. There are emotional decisions that people make. There's generational decisions. Because I've been in New York City working on the trades end and the financial professional end, there's nothing that we've not experienced. And so with the shifting of the times around the world, we are poised to be the people that help the others that transition onto the other side of our new business environment with happiness and being profitable.
So powerful. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us here on the Happy Spot podcast. Thank you for founding the Happy Spot. And it's been an amazing conversation, Jack.
I'm sure. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you.